Hello, welcome to the Jack and Joe show, and also welcome to the Fulhamish podcast. My name is Jack Kelly. I'm joined by my partner in crime, my weekly man I touch it base with. That was terrible. Joe Sansom, how are you?
When you said weekly man you touch, I was about to say, I'm not sure where this is going. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, I mean, Jack, you were just saying you've spoken about this City game a few times now, and why not speak about it a little bit more? But we're going to have a little review of the season as a whole as we go into what I can't believe is another international break. As an international break detester, as I am. But you know what? I think it's quite a good time to regroup and think about what's happened so far and look ahead to, not the worst run of fixtures on paper in the world.
I think it's quite a good run of fixtures, and to be fair, like I'll make this point off the bat, like no fixture scares me now. Not after City, not after that performance, not after the way we played, not after the way we hurt them. Aston Villa, Everton, Brentford, Wolves, no Palace.
Palace, Wolves, yeah.
I mean that, if anything, is a really good run of fixtures. Villa's obviously going to be tricky, but let's get into it. But well, Joe, I mean it was an extraordinary game at the Etihad. It is a shame it's the international break now, of course. I was very much like, I can't be bothered to even watch England. And then 2 days ago, someone was like, I've got a spare ticket. Do you want to go watch England? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Come on, England. But yeah, it's going to be a fun episode because it was such a fun game at the Etihad. Joe, from
Really
your
fun
perspective,
game.
your perspective, you obviously watched it on a stream. Could you believe what you were seeing?
No. I mean, it was as simple as that. I mean, for the first 10 minutes, I absolutely could because, let's face it, City started well. They had the shot from Gundogan that went just wide a couple of minutes in, the volley, half volley. Then obviously ball goes through to Haaland, puts it just wide. Then there's a header that is saved by Leno quite comfortably. I think there was another header that was just wide. Just one of those starts of the games where you're like, this is going to be how the entire 90 is. How long can we hang on for? And to be honest, based on that, I didn't think very long, but we seemed to change the shape. Iwobi shifted to a 5 at the back. He was the right wing back, as you probably saw very well from being there. And the view from the press box at City, I know, is, you've got quite a decent view there. I think that the game plan shift was probably something that we prepared for, that, if they were battering us in terms of possession early on and being unable to get a foothold in the game, that's what we do. But our game plan from then was absolutely fantastic. I loved the way that we basically left Jimenez up the pitch and he would just fire it into space for Adama, and it was working. We were disciplined. Everyone was winning their individual duels. We kept players like Haaland and Foden so quiet. And if you'd have said to me, you're going to the Etihad and you're going to score 2 goals and Haaland is not going to be involved in any of the goals whatsoever, you probably think you're coming away with at least a draw. And I really do think that that is the minimum that our performance merited. One of the games I enjoyed the most this season, which feels weird to say when it was a loss, but I was just so proud of the way we played. Better teams than us go to the Etihad and get smashed. And, we've been in that position in the past. It was just really satisfying to see us go there and play our football and go toe-to-toe with them and look really, really dangerous. And, on another day, we come away with at least a point, potentially all 3. And, the headlines will all be about those Adama missed chances, and I completely get why, because there were clear-cut chances. On another day, he probably does get a hat-trick. But it's also been said in several places that players that aren't Adama, aside from the one that comes across to him and he puts over the bar, the 2 that he basically made by himself by outpacing first, I think it was Lewis, and then the second half, it was obviously famously Kyle Walker. No other player in our squad, or very rarely another player in the league, would be able to even get into that position. And when you're running at speed, it is hard. What did make my head slightly warm was the video that went out on the Sunday where it said, 5 years ago today or whatever it was, Adama scored 2 at the Etihad for Wolves. And I was looking at them going, these chances were harder than the chance he had yesterday. One of those things, if you're going to beat City, you have to be perfect. We weren't. but the game plan was. The individual taking the chances wasn't. But Jack, I was very, very happy.
So yeah, I mean, it was a valiant effort, but I think more than a valiant effort. I think a valiant effort is like, oh, you went to City, you played well, but you went to City, you played well, you conceded 3, but you didn't make a fool of yourself. I think this
Yeah,
was
like
more
a
of
valiant effort would probably be like when we went there 2 years ago and lost in the last minute 2-1, but they
yeah.
had 10 men. So, sort of that sort of thing where you're like hanging on a little bit. But we weren't hanging on. But that's the thing. We were
We had
just
them on the
playing our
ropes.
stuff.
There was moments in the second half where we had the ball. Their fans were getting very upset because they're Man City and they're at the Etihad and they're not getting the ball and they're not creating chances. And I'm like, bro, Fulham actually have got them on the ropes. It's just a shame that when Man City got it back into their shape, it was as good as when we got back into our shape. There was just no way through for Fulham. And I wouldn't say we were lacking any quality to play that final ball through. I think it was just there was hardly any space to play into whatsoever, especially when we got into the box. It was all well and good outside the box. Everyone was receiving the ball. It was being overturned quite nicely, and Fulham would just really pepper in Man City, which is a sentence I didn't think I'd be ever saying. But it just shows that in the Premier League, you can look at individual fixtures and write them off and go, we won't win that. No chance, no chance. But actually, there's always a chance. And there's always a chance with Fulham because of the threats we had going forward. I thought Pereira was fantastic, got the goal. I thought Jimenez was brilliant, amazing assist. Adama Traore, of course, regardless of those chances, he had a great game. He just had a great game. He was the main threat. He was the one that was always going to cause those sort of problems. And he's a very unique player. No other player would be able to do what he did, albeit missed the chances as well. I thought we were great. I thought Iwobi was brilliant, playing that sort of Bobby De Cordova-Reid role absolutely brilliantly. And apparently he has played that role before, Joe, tucking in and right back as a 5. I enjoyed Tete as the third centre-back. Didn't have to bring on Diop. We were just like, we'll just have Tete play there. And then finally, Joachim Andersen and Calvin Bassey and Antti Robinson had very, very strong games as well. So, any final thoughts from City before we move on?
I think just pride in the performance, as we've all said. We're repeating ourselves probably, but it was a game that I, like probably every other fan, go into with just fear. I hate playing City away. It's the game that, like you said before, Jack, basically the opposite of that. It's the game I go to with no hope. But like we both said last week, if not now, when? And it didn't happen. But you know what? I think we gave it our best shot. And the manner that we lost the game, I thought, was particularly unfortunate. Obviously, you make your own luck in regards to the missed chances, but it's very rare that Kovacic bags a brace, one of which was deflected. Yeah. And then the Doku goal, I mean, that quality off the bench is pretty obscene. And, he doesn't score many, and I feel like we were a bit unfortunate with that one as well, just in terms of he cuts inside a lot, and the end product is very rarely swerving into that top corner past Leno. So unfortunate, but so proud of the performance. And we go into the international break in 8th position. If after that West Ham game when we conceded that late equaliser, and let's face it, we were all feeling pretty low about Fulham, you'd have told me that we would be winning against Newcastle and Forest, and then a very, very hard-fought defeat against City. I'd have snapped your hand off for that. I wouldn't have expected 6 points from the next 9 available. And like you said earlier, that run of games, Villa looks very tough, but at home, I definitely back us to get a result there. And based on that City performance, if we use that game plan against any other top sides, put it into play at the Emirates, put it into play at Anfield, going to Tottenham the start of December. If we play like that, we can definitely cause even more harm to those teams. And it's very interesting to see how far this team can go, because we weren't expecting to be in such a good position early on. I know that the fixtures overall have been reasonably kind, but you can only beat what's in front of you. I don't think that they've been easy by any stretch. West Ham and Newcastle at home, not easy. Forest away, tough. Leicester at home, still had to get past them. Ipswich have looked decent so far, especially on their own patch. Maybe West Ham game aside, but on their own patch, they look very good. So really delighted with the start, and this game just summed up what I've been impressed with by Fulham this season. It's bravery, it's a new style of play without Palhinha, without Tosin, without Willian, and I've loved what I've seen so far.
I think, obviously, we're 8th in the table. I'm looking at the table now, and I think that Liverpool, obviously, City, Arsenal, Chelsea, Villa, and then you got like Brighton in 6th. I think like we've been, and obviously Newcastle in 7th, but their performance levels haven't been very good. I think we've been like the joint 6th best team in the Premier League so far this season. Impressive results, great performances, narrow defeats in both Manchester games. It's so weird because actually, you look at the season as a whole so far, and it sort of reminds me of a couple of seasons ago when we played back to back Man United and Man City before the World Cup. In fact, it was Man City first, and we lost both occasions 2-1. And you sort of came away with it thinking, wow, that was really good. I'm really proud of that. And it's actually been like that this season, where we had the first game at United, played well, lost 1-0, and then the most recent game, Man City, and lost 3-2. And in between that, we've been unbeaten and put in some fantastic performances. I genuinely think this Fulham team is destined to finish quite high up in the Premier League this season. If we play like that away from home, and obviously the Cottage has been a very difficult place for teams to come so far this season. I think Marco Silva is just, again, doing absolute wonders, getting the best out of all the players. The best thing that happened on Saturday was Rodrigo Muniz scoring his first goal. That is going to do him wonders. We remember he scored that first goal against Burnley, and he went on to have the purplest of patches. Can he do it again? I just wonder if he'll get the nod now over Jimenez, because now both players are scoring. Jimenez is going to Mexico for the international break. Rodrigo Muniz will have more time with Silva at Motspur Park and might then get the nod in that case. But also, you can't overlook the fact that Jimenez has put in a really good performance at Man City and has scored goals in the previous 3 games. I know this is a conversation for next week, so maybe we'll park it. So let's get your thoughts on, over the 7 games, what's been the performance that has impressed you the most? What's been the performance that's concerned you the most? I genuinely, I was talking to someone yesterday about this. I don't really have any complaints about the season so far, apart from the switch off against West Ham at the end of the game. Apart from that, I'm fairly okay with everything else that's happened.
Yeah, I think so. I think that added time against West Ham was a disaster. But for the rest of that game, we were almost faultless, aside from simply just taking our chances. I think that the United game now, not just based on the performance, but also just based on how their season's been, that's the one you look back on and you think, you know what, could we have done more there? But it was the first game of the season. We hadn't finalised our squad yet. Yes, it's only been a couple of changes to the starting 11. But, if we'd have had Anderson starting at the back and we'd been able to play out of their press a little bit more, that was what caused us a lot of problems. You never know what could have happened. That's when I look back on I'm most disappointed. The performance I've been most proud of has honestly been City, just based on the opposition. But, taking that into a result, that first half against Newcastle was just sensational. So there's so many moments we can look back on. The games that have been tight, we've got something out of. The Ipswich game, we weren't at our best. We got away with a point. The Forest game, not at our best, but probably still the best team on the pitch. Got away with 3 points and a clean sheet away from home. And like you said, Jack, there's reasons to be cheerful looking forward. Purple patch from Muniz last season had him looking like Barney the dinosaur for a few games. And if he can replicate that off the bench, I mean, he got the assist against Newcastle. He had a decent cameo against Forest where he broke away a couple of times, didn't set the world light, but he was fine. And now the great finish against City. Now, I'm going to put my foot down and say that I think Jimenez should start the next game just because I thought he was brilliant again. But at least we now have a conversation. We didn't have that before. And I love that we've got 2 strikers that are currently doing quite well. We didn't have that a few weeks ago. We were saying we've got 0. So long may it continue. Jimenez, his all-round hold-up play has improved so much from what it was last season. And the confidence you saw from that assist. We've got a squad of players that can chip in from the bench as well. Reece Nelson now, 2 goals in all competitions plus an assist now. someone that you really think could start starting games soon, just based on the quality that he offers. The fact that, Castagne, yes, he let Doku come inside, but the quality coming on at right back is great to see. Tete's been fantastic, but if he tires, you have that option. Diop coming off the bench as centre back, he's been basically faultless when he's played this season. So it's great to see, and I just really hope that this squad unity that we've got and as fans continues, because tougher games will happen. We've got a horrible run on paper, I think, end of November to end of December, essentially, basically the Christmas period, where we've got Liverpool, we've got Arsenal, we've got Brighton, we've got Chelsea, we've got Tottenham. It's a really nasty run. It's just, that's when we need to be ready to hopefully get a few shocks on the board, but the togetherness will really help. And if you can go into a run like that with a bit of confidence from a nicer run on paper that we've just mentioned earlier, then honestly, the world's our oyster. And I really hope that we can push on. And I think that as fans, our mindset about the season needs to change now. I was thinking, is it going to be tough without Palhinha? We've seen we can play without him now. We've seen we can adapt in a different way. I want to see us finish top 10 now. That's my new aim for the season. I think that we're good enough. I agree with you. We haven't seen teams blow us out of the water. Saturday was the first time we've conceded more than once in a game. We can talk about the fixtures on paper being easy all we like, but better teams than us, like Arsenal, easy, for example, have gone against Leicester and had to get a 94th minute goal to get past them. These are things that happen. You can only play what's in front of you. Ipswich away, not easy. West Ham at home, yes, they've not been great so far. I would still maintain not easy. Newcastle will improve as the season goes on. Forest away, very, very difficult. United's never an easy place to go. And City, as we know, is City. So I would argue not easy. Easier than others, potentially, yes. We haven't had to go away to Anfield yet, the Emirates, but we've had our own fair share of those games. And we will, I think, play worse than we did against Man City and come away with 3 points on several occasions this season.
Yeah, it's a great point. Honestly, this has been the most enjoyable start to a season I can remember in many a year. Obviously, championship seasons were good fun. Even under Silva, we lost to Blackpool and we lost to Coventry. I know that wasn't right at the beginning, but that was fairly near the beginning of the season. And this is the Premier League we're talking about, and Fulham have just put in some. And I still look at that bench that we put out, and I think it was actually the fact that obviously Sander Berge started on Saturday. We had Smith Rowe on the bench. The bench looked 10 times stronger. But even when Smith Rowe's starting, I'm looking at the bench. I'm thinking it doesn't. There's only about 2 or 3 players I think that could come on and change this game. Nelson, Wilson, who hasn't really featured much at all, and Muniz. Everyone else can do a job. Like TC came on and did brilliantly on Saturday, and obviously, like you say, Castagne, Diop, Harrison Reed. These players can come and do a job, but no one. Okay, sorry, apart from maybe Muniz and Nelson and maybe Wilson, can come on and change the game, get a goal, get an assist, and we've seen that happen so far this season. I still think that come January we're going to have to dip into the market,
100%.
And obviously that's going to be a conversation to have. God, I suppose we're going to be in like mid-October by the time we play Villa, and it's going to be like, well, then it's nearly November, and then it's nearly like Christmas period. So it does go very, very fast. But I'm just going to reiterate what I said earlier, and you're rattling off these fixtures that we have coming up to the Christmas period, but like Tottenham, okay, we beat them last season. Arsenal, we beat them last season. Brighton, we beat them last season. Chelsea, okay, we lost to them both times, but we should have done better, I think, on at least away from home. Liverpool, we played like 4 times last season and drew to them once and ran them close on several occasions. What was the score when they came to our place? Oh, 3-1.
3-1.
Yeah. I'm not going to look at Liverpool and go, oh God, what if Salah runs at us? Who cares? We've got a man on the break that. Do you know what I mean? I don't like.
I see your point.
The most dangerous player in the whole Premier League in Erling Haaland, when he's running through the middle, he had one chance where he was forced a bit wide and shot wide, and I was like, well, hey, he's wide, whatever. Well, I didn't do that because I was
from
in
the press box.
That would have been so funny. God, it's tipping it down outside. The most dangerous player in the Premier League, and he just didn't get anything. There was actually one chance where where the ball like broke to him, but he couldn't quite like take it in his stride, and Fulham managed to recover the ball. And that's the most dangerous player you're going to have. And the next time we play Man City's on the last day of the season, where probably everything's going to be wrapped up by then anyway, or City are going to be facing relegation. Who knows? That would be really funny. So like when you think of going to the Emirates, you think of going to Anfield, like you just said, Leicester have given Arsenal a game, Southampton gave Arsenal a game. We are better than those teams, and I think that we'll give them a game. I'm not going to be like, oh, but this horrible run of fixtures. It's like, no, I think we're going to pick up points in a lot of these games. And of course, because we've had such a bad start to the season, such a good start to the season, there will be a run, because every team goes on a bad run, and that will happen. And it might be against teams that you should be beating. It might be against teams that you expect to lose to. But for now, let's just enjoy it. I think we'll go to we'll go to Goodison and get something. I think we'll go to Sellers Park and get something. We are a fantastically good team. We're so much more defensively organised. We're so well oiled, well drilled. Lukic has been, for me, second, third best player we've had so far this season. Like revolutionary.
I mean, you could easily make an option for him being the best, just based on the gap that he had to fill. That's a fair point. But the gap that he had to fill, and the fact that we've looked, and yes, other players play a part in that, including players further forward, including players behind him. But we've looked more solid defensively this season in terms of the amount of chances that we concede than we did last season. And I know that that's not all to do with Pellegrini going, Lukic coming in, various things change in terms of style of play, in terms of opposition, in terms of overall levels of the squad, in terms of how teams play against you, potentially due to higher levels of respect that we've built up by not being the whipping boys that we were when we came up a few years ago on various occasions. But Lukic has transformed that midfield. And don't get me wrong, if you said Pellegrini comes back tomorrow, I'd be delighted. But
he might.
But he might have to at this rate. Pay as you play deal, that sort of thing.
I think City might go in for him in January, by the way.
I saw, was it Henry Winter mentioned that on Twitter? And you could see it, because I've got to admit, City, like, yes, we were fantastic, but City were not at their best either. And I think that's partly down to us. But you can see a quadri-shaped hole in how they control games. And Kovacic, yes, he popped up with 2 goals. He wasn't doing the same job. And yes, if they continue playing like that, they weren't great against Newcastle last week. They weren't at their best against Arsenal either. They're going to drop more points, and that's not something that flies with them. So, I can definitely see them going into the market. And would Pellegrini be good enough on the ball? I don't see why not. I think that's something that always gets sort of thrown at him. But yeah, I think that honestly, Lukic has been sensational. Anton, I agree with you. Transformative player. The difference between our build-up in that Ipswich game, where we were all complaining, rightly so, about how we struggled. The difference between that and West Ham and the rest of the games that have followed has been night and day.
Do you know what's like an insane thing? In the last 2 seasons, we've lost 2 of the most key players that we've had at the club in recent history, in Mitrovic and João Pellegrini. But really, since they've both left individually, apart from maybe at the start of last season, there hasn't really been a time where the fans are looking back and going, we really miss Mitrovic. And especially now, I haven't even seen one shout this season of people going, we really need Pellegrini. It's been, and there was massive fear in the summer. We spoke about it all summer, basically. We were like, we're not really replacing Pellegrini out and out. And actually, Marco Silva reiterated it. He was like, we're not looking for a Pellegrini replacement. He's such an individual, unique player that it's very hard to find a player who has those sort of traits. And Lukic has just taken more responsibility. Sander Berger actually was really, really good on Saturday as well, when we were playing a little bit more defensively minded because we were playing Man City. But even like last season, okay, when we struggled to score, and then Raul got his goal against Villa, and we went on to do really well goal scoring wise, and Vinicius popped it up with a couple. But I was very rarely seeing like, I can't believe we let Mitrovic go, blah 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 blah, because I think mainly because of the reasons why he wanted to go and stuff, and like he forced the move sort of, so no one was really going to take him back anyway. But we've lost like these 2 unbelievable players, and it's been like, okay, haven't really bat an eyelid, really. We're just carrying on as usual. In fact, we're not even carrying on as usual. We're doing better than when we had them in the first place. Insane.
I mean, I have to admit, like, there is a part of me that does, and I'm sure you do the same, Jack. I'm sure everyone does. You know, you can't help think what could have been, for example, if we had Polinia where Lukic is, Lukic where, let's say, for the sake of this season, although Pereira was great on Saturday, I agree with you. I've given him some criticism. He was great. Yeah. But if you put Lukic where Pereira's been playing, because Lukic has had a better season so far than Pereira in the 8 role, and if you had, you know, Mitrovic up front ahead of Jimenez, who's been fantastic again, but let's face it, you put Mitrovic up there, I just do wonder how far that squad could have gone. But it doesn't matter, like you say, because we're doing better than we did when they were here. We've got a better team now, I would say, even if the individual parts on paper don't look as high quality. The overall sum of the team is much, much higher in quality than when either of them were here. And we've got players that can punish teams that are better on paper than we are. And we nearly did it on Saturday, and I think we'll do it various times again. I love the flexibility now of bringing in someone like Sander Berger for a more defensive setup. And I was complaining on the group chat. I was like, oh, you know, I want Smith Rowe in the starting 11 because I want someone that can take our chances when we get them. And I still stand by that, but the game plan worked perfectly in terms of we had the chances, we should have taken them. Pereira did a wonderful workhorse role for the team, but also provided you know, numbers up front in his presence, and obviously got the goal with good positioning and bursting into the box. It's what we've asked him to do for ages. That's what we want to see going forward. He loves playing against City because I think of his United roots. He clearly likes Ronaldo because of his celebration. No comment. But, you know, this is what we want to see going forward. And Iwobi, fantastic shift. Traore, fantastic shift. Jimenez, brilliant workhorse again. And the quality that he's got. All I hope about Jimenez is that he doesn't do too many, you know, Rabonas coming forward as his confidence increases, unless one ends in the back of the net. Just because we've had enough of them. The back heel, I like. The Rabona, not so much.
Was that last season against Newcastle? He tried the Rabona cross.
Yeah, and also against Brentford when we were 2-0 down. And it was right in front of me, and I just wanted to leave. Down to 10 men. Oh, God.
I'm sorry, Joe. I'm going to expose you just because I want your explanation and I want your reasoning.
Do it.
You've been you said on the group chat, which is a very tight-knit group
chat. I know
chat,
what this is. Yeah.
You weren't impressed with Iwobi.
Yeah.
Not on Saturday, I should say.
It was more the Forest game. Yeah.
Forest game and
most of the season, yeah.
Big chance against Newcastle, which he hit. It was a good save from Pope. But I definitely think that it was... my argument is that the way we were set up against Forest, I don't know why, but we were counterattacking at like snail's pace. But there was a couple of times where he was running. It was when the full access came out. And there was a run by Iwobi. I went, actually, that was quite a strong run and actually got a shot away and it was just blocked, but that was definitely going goal bound. Yeah. But there was times where we were coming forward way too slow. But against Man City, I think he absolutely was brilliant both his defensive role and then going forward. So explain yourself.
Yeah. We know what it was. I saw people on Twitter and rightly or wrongly speaking about Adama being frustrating. Yes. Jimenez being frustrating at times. Yes. Pereira getting a lot of flack, you know. And then nothing really being mentioned about Iwobi, who, let's face it, he's had a good start to the season. I'm not doubting that. But there have been occasions where I found him incredibly frustrating to watch. And Forest was one of those games where I felt that when Nelson came off the bench, and yes, the state of the game was very different. There was massive space to run into.
Huge.
But for that first half, I found Iwobi, when the ball went to him, that was basically where the attacks ended for the most part. Not every time, granted. And against, you know, Newcastle, obviously got the good assist for Smith Rowe, but I found him quite wasteful. I found that you know, that shot against Pope, you say good save. I would argue don't hit it straight at the keeper. You know, one of those things, but it's like, I just found him frustrating. And on Saturday, he played a completely different role and he proved me completely wrong. He was very unwasteful with the ball. He was picking the right pass every time when we had it, which wasn't a lot, but was still more than we normally have at City. I think it was about 42% possession, which is, you know, pretty decent.
Insane.
You know, really good. So yeah, that's why I said it. I still stand by it for a few of those games. I found him frustrating. I think West Ham was another one where I don't think he was at his best at all. I thought that he was fine.
Ipswich, he was poor.
Ipswich, he was poor. United, I actually thought he was extremely poor. I
Right.
have to be honest, but I'm just going to move that one on right there. I thought that, but in that game, I thought that Adama was poor. I thought the Pereira was poor. It was basically everyone behind the striker in that game. The final ball was so abysmal, and that's what I look back and I'm frustrated by, because we played really well up until that final product on the day. Iwobi is, his place is nailed down right now. He will start the next game, but between him and Adama, I do think at one point over the course of the season, at some point I should say, Nelson will come into starting 11, I think. Not necessarily for the whole season, but will at least have a run in the team from the off, because he's looked so dangerous. And right now, I don't know who it will be out of the two of them, but obviously one of them would need to get dropped to the bench to facilitate that.
I don't think we're being negative here. I think we're nitpicking.
No, we're nitpicking. Look, everyone's played well.
Exactly. It means we've had a really good season. But if someone put a gun to your head and said, has there been any negatives you could talk about? Then we're nitpicking. What I will say to counteract that is that Iwobi took a really, really good goal against Leicester. Okay, he didn't really hit it very well, but it went into the back of the net. And we won the game. So thanks to Iwobi. So, I love Iwobi. He gave me a really good interview in the summer as well. And he was really generous with his time. So really sort of pleased. Do you know what I was really pleased about as well? I came off the train on Saturday, and a few Fulham players were on the same train. Adama, Raul, Sessegnon, Diop, Robinson, Harrison Reed, to name a few. And given the manner of the game and Adama, I was like, oh God, please don't give Adama pelters. And everyone was so supportive of him. Everyone was like asking him for pictures, like, oh, honestly, head up, keep your head up, like you played really well. And he was just beaming from ear to ear. And maybe on that train home, he's probably thinking, God, I could have won that game for Fulham today. But I love the fans' sort of response to him being there and asking for pictures and just that encouragement. And I think that says a lot about the fans who are in such a good place right now.
Yeah.
The criticism for Fulham, which obviously hasn't been much at all. We've only lost 2 games by a narrow margin. There's been criticisms of individual players, perhaps, and there's a guy at the back of the Johnny Haynes who just does not like Pereira at all. And every time he loses the ball, he's like, "Is that a key pass, Pereira?"
Oh, for God's sake. By the way, look, Pereira. I thought Pereira was great, but oh my goodness, stop posting your key passes stats on Instagram. Challenge impossible.
Oh really,
Pereira? Like you're not foot mob. I don't need to see that. But
now we're definitely nitpicking.
That is nitpicking. But you know what? Keep them coming. I just don't want to see you posting about them, because, to be honest, the posting almost comes as like counteracting. I get it. You're sort of fighting back against probably criticism, but at the same time, we need more goals from you. And you know what? The performance on Saturday was the perfect example of what I want to see from Pereira. And he was in a more advanced role. That's why he was probably in the box, because you obviously had Berger and Lukic behind him. But West Ham game last season, you pointed out last week, great example. When he got the 2 goals from crashing the box. And that's what I want to see from him. And if it's Smith Rowe in that position, I think we get that a bit more from him. So maybe that's why Pereira does it less. My opinion is they should both be doing it. And more numbers forward will only be good news for us.
Final question before we go. It's been a really good chat, actually. In fact, 50 minutes in, I was thinking, God, I think I've run out of things to talk about. However, we've gone on for another 20 minutes. It's classic Jack and Joe show. One person we haven't really mentioned in this video that's obviously one of the most important figures, Marco Silva. Please give me your thoughts on Marco so far this season. He obviously signed a contract almost this time last year. There's rumours of Erik ten Hag and Thomas Tuchel, and Sky just put out a notification saying that they haven't even approached Thomas Tuchel yet. I am nervous about Silva being poached by a Tottenham, by a Man United. However, I actually think he would turn down those offers because we are a more exciting project right now.
I think that he would turn down some. I'd be nervous if United came, just because this is Manchester United, because it's the fact, the amount of investment that they would have, and I don't know. It would make me nervous. I'm not saying he would accept it, but I don't know. He would definitely turn it down. It makes me nervous, but you can see why he would be linked to jobs like this, because the job he's doing is sensational. There was a table going around yesterday on Twitter, which was the XG table when games were 11v11 this season. And the reason that was brought out was, I think, to appease Arsenal fans because they've had a few red cards in their games.
Yeah.
You had Arsenal right at the top, and you also had Liverpool. Then you had Fulham in terms of the most XG compared to the least conceded when 11v11, and the amount that we were creating massively helped by that Man City game in terms of the amount that we created in that. We didn't concede much. We won on XG. The amount that Silva is getting out of this team is sensational. You looked at the squad on paper before we'd signed anyone. Let's face it, we went into that game at Old Trafford with no new signings in the team. And you had a few fans from other clubs going, "Oh no, that team's crap on paper." All of this, there's another. We weren't saying that necessarily, but we were saying, maybe we're going to struggle a little bit more than we did last season. He has completely turned that on his head. We have made, what was it now, 3 changes to the starting 11 this season. I think that he, brought in Anderson and he brought in Jimenez against West Ham, and they've obviously stayed in the team. And then aside from that, he brought in Sander Berge for Smith Rowe.
Yeah.
But we have just been absolutely sensational, and he hasn't needed to change it much. He's been fantastic in terms of how he's managed the new players coming in, when he's needed to bring them off the bench. He is probably the most overperforming manager in the league right now in terms of what he's got to work with, I would argue. And I love it, and long may it continue.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. There was a point made about Nuno as well, and Thomas Frank and Silva. They're the 3 managers getting the best out of their team. Although there was a tweet, in the same tweet, he was like, they don't really talk about philosophies. They just do their job. And I'm like, well, that's not necessarily true. Like, every press conference, Silva always talks about identity and philosophy. So that's an interesting one. Guys, it's been a fantastic chat. I mean, like I said, 50 minutes in, I was thinking, God, we've rounded up City. Now what do we talk about? And there's actually so much to talk about. We just had to sort of try and find it from our craniums. Joe, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for being here.
No, pleasure, mate. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Enjoy the international break and bring on Villa. We'll speak about that next week.
Yes, thanks so much for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks so much for listening. If you're listening on the pod feed, this has been an absolute pleasure. It's fantastic just to sit here for almost 40 minutes and talk about how good Fulham are as a football club and as a football team. And I will say my final point being Marco Silva, brilliant. The recruitment this summer has been absolutely outstanding. Outstanding. I love this club so much. Come on. Joe, thanks so much. And we'll speak next week for sure. And for everyone, yeah, perfect. For everyone who has listened, for everyone who has watched, I want to say a massive thank you. You seriously rock our worlds. We love talking Fulham. We love talking Fulham when they're doing well. We don't like talking Fulham when they're not doing well. But so far, we're doing fantastically. We'll speak again next week on the Jack and Joe Show. There'll be another pod out next week as well during your international break. Thank you so much for listening, watching, and come on, Fulham.